son. I'm gonna give you some of that cheap sauce. You keep talking like that.
Boo-goo, you're about to get cheap sauced if you don't shut your frackin' trap and pull your head out of your asshole.
Ik stomp je uit je cockpit en knijp je oogballen door je anus naar buiten.
What? No, it clearly says battle cry right here on the script.
You got 10 minutes.
Okie day, digging in with gusto, and we're gonna have to start with hydrating our wet palette. Once we've dribbled some moisture all over that sponge and applied a brand new sheet of parchment paper, we're gonna try out some new paints as suggested to me by a kind community member.
That's not a knife. That's a knife.
How many of y'all are old enough to know that reference? Anyhow, the new colors in question today are these fabulous blues from Vallejo's Game Color Blue set. I was really struggling to find the right bright blue to paint up the so-called robin's egg blue that the Crater Cobras call for, finding that my paint arsenal just didn't have that classic ice blue or even anything really remotely close. Plus, I didn't want to hand mix the tones and risk inconsistencies in the paint job. In the end, I didn't really get them bright enough for the Canon paint color, but they were still fun to slap that color on, and the blues that came in this set greatly amplified my joy in painting azure tones in the hobby corner. My rack 5 goes brrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrr de groene deel in het model om de blauwe ink voldoende tijd te geven om volledig te drogen. Hey now, my Dutch is getting pretty okay, don't you think? What I said there is that we need to buy a little time to let that dark blue ink dry out, so we're putting on the green that'll make up the secondary color of this here regimental color scheme while we wait long enough to move on to the blue. That blue in question is gonna be this here absolutely fabulous magic blue. Not only is this the singular color that sold me on buying this here 4-pack, but it'll also serve as the foundational blue for the Crater Cobras. So far, we've slapped this color on once before to serve as that initial base tone and washed it down with a dark and thin pass of Imperial Blue to establish a nice shadow layer. Now we'll go back in and hit these chassis with a pretty heavy overbrush of that fantastic bluey blue magic blue to emphasize the blueness of these half-blue boys. I haven't seen anything this blue since I spent a week over in Bluculus Castle. We'll continue that in blueing up through a light dusting of sunrise blue to make things look rightly pale. Blake's Love. May my plasma bring fresh cooked ammo bins.
Stage clear!
With the bluing done on the top halves of our half and half merc scheme, it's time to move in on getting done them camo pants on all these lads. What better way to fool your opponent than to paint your legs in a pattern that makes them completely invisible, leading your foes to thinking that you're just a bunch of floating torsos bearing down with tons of firepower and intense magical effects to allow your spectral form to take flight and swoop down on your opponent all spoopy-like. Plus, with them camo legs, your lance will always be just tops, no bottoms here. Unless that's what you're into. I ain't one to judge. It was at this point in the editing that discussions with chat devolved into a philosophical argument about balance and power struggles and whether or not every top needs a bottom. I'm not so sure that balance is necessary. Hell, I've managed just fine without ever being able to skateboard, but once chat insisted that several tops can share a bottom, or that one top can service multiple bottoms but that can get hard to manage, I kinda just relented and dove deep instead of walking on by, and now we've packed yet another non sequitur in the video. Thanks, chat. And somehow that was just the perfect length.
Continue. Prepare.
Alright, now that we're working on this voiceover without the corrupting influence of chat, we can maybe actually start talking about the work at hand. At this juncture, we're digging in to enhance the shadows on the model by utilizing a little bit of liquid talent from Mr. James' workshop. First, we'll go with a nice Agrax Earthshade brown tone to harmonize with our invisible camo pants, then get out that all-timer NULN oil to start shading down that super shiny duraluminum into rich tonal diversity. While our liquid talent dries out, let's move on to doing some other fun details on the models. With our boys being rendered in such a bright blue but also having those see-through legs, I wanted to rely on a color that's more neutral and earth-toned while still maintaining that nice blue-orange contrast effect. For that effect, I've opted to go with a nice brown, since orange is just brown. Starting with Vallejo 70.880 Khaki Gray, we'll add our brown Jareen base coat onto all the looking glasses of these here mechs, serving as a kinda neutral, kinda orangey foundational tone for some funky colors. A little side note here, as I was again discussing with chat, is that it's really hard to tell the tale of what I'm doing here in a 10-minute minis episode because the shots are so condensed. Though there's some brown on these bases and some washing and some rust effects here, we're going to keep talking about the neat use of weird colors on the cockpit because I find it to be a really interesting tale. As y'all saw about 10 seconds into this clip, our highlight tone for the cockpits is going to be Vallejo 70.845 Sunny Skin Tone. It's a fun yellowy, orangey, peachy color and will provide some nice visual interest while maintaining the odd choice of tonal foundation. We've managed to keep the neutrality while also embracing that blue-orange contrast with a solid choice of a brown Jareen color. I definitely recommend experimenting with atypical cockpit jeweling to improve the breadth of your painting repertoire. You never know what truly works in trying new things until you get out there and try it. So I've got to encourage y'all to experiment and shake up your established painting maxims. True growth is on the other side of uncomfortability, so get you up and out of them comfort zones.
Next up.
With the detail work on the duders and their having been applied to bases, it's time to make these Crater Cobras properly in uniform with the inclusion of tiny hand-painted regimental iconography. I first worked out a step-by-step plan to paint this logo on a spare piece of card, and then dug in with the same process on the models just in a smaller scale. Starting out with a silhouette of the totality of our logo painted in jet black, we can go on to painting the first of our colors. In this case, the snake's body will be rendered in Citadel Tau Light Ochre. We'll put this color down in thin but solid coats, going for full unshaded opacity. Forming the back of the body, all the coils, and the hood, we'll slap this color on and leave tiny bits of black outline peeking through in between the individual segments of the body. Next up on the order of operations is a yellow belly using Citadel Phalanx Yellow thinned out enough to flow nicely off the tip of our tool. We'll give it a few quick strokes up and down to establish coverage with rapidity, adding that splash of color on the front of our serpent that makes the whole ensemble come together. A final touch of Vallejo 70.870 medium sea gray for a Cameronian Star League eye, and we'll just repeat that process across the whole lance, unifying them as a veteran squad. Though it can seem super intimidating to paint on little tiny free-handed details, I've got to take a moment once more to assure you directly that I absolutely believe in you, and that you'll be so very shocked to discover just how great you'll be at putting these little logos onto your fellers. It gets better with practice, so keep it simple and keep at it, and soon your regimental markings will look beyond good enough. Finally, we're going to give our invisible legs a bit of love and a gentle teasing of Citadel Warboss green dry brushed all over their raised panel tips. This final detail on the lower bits will serve to add just a touch of highlighting as well as a flattening layer to make the camo a bit less busy, which will help to draw our eyes back to those funky brown Jareen cockpits. Further, we can help guide the viewer's gaze by slowly building up this effect more as we move up them pins from the feet to the hips. Keeping the lowermost portions of the model darker and less detailed subconsciously pulls the flow of examination towards the brighter face and shoulders.
Almost there. Gravy cat.
Home stretch now, and we want to do them final minute touches that pull the whole thing together. We're gonna start this segment off with some sponge chipping all over our happy little paint jobs, utilizing my favorite chipping mix in the form of Vallejo 70.822 German camo black brown and 70.985 whole red. These two tones together work on almost any model's color scheme and well represent a partially oxidized steel color without needing to get out any bright and flashy true metallics. Finally, we're to the final touch of adding a touch of final bits of flock into the base as that last final touch to pull the whole thing together. Ensuring to break off bits that are small enough to be in scale to our 1/285th models, we'll stick those bits to the bases using some PVA glue with a bit of help from our Sticky Buddy gas palette. A bit here and a bit there in two different tones, always striving to avoid repetition of patterns, and these tiny touches will be the final step in making these models look like finalized compositions. With this last bit of final touches, our bases look properly immersive, and we're led on in to the end of our job and further on into our grand reveal.
Join us next time for more 10-minute minis right here on Country Fried Minis.
Double standard, no. Weird, yes. I'm okay being weird. I like being weird. Good place to be. If you're normal, that's weird. Embrace your weird, y'all.
Right. Thank you, lecherous titty lady.